The red light on the security reader flashes like I'm a stranger, even though I've walked through this door for 12 years. I swiped again. Harder, stupidly, like force can convince plastic to remember me. Behind the reception desk, Brandon Keene stands with HR on either side. Calm as a priest at a funeral. He doesn't look guilty. He looks done. Your access has been revoked, the HR woman said. Brandon slides a folder across the counter. My name was printed on the top page in thick black letters like a headline. Termination, effective immediately. My throat tightened when I saw the reason. Disruptive behavior. Failure to align with leadership. Not performance, not attendance, not facts. Just a character assassination stapled into a packet. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't beg. I felt heat climbing my neck as Brandon leaned in and said softly, "You could have made this easy. You chose to make it messy." He nods toward the lobby cameras like they're witnesses. "Hand over your badge." And that's when I realized this isn't about my job. It's about silencing me. In the folder, under the termination letter, I saw a copy of my safety report marked confidential with my name highlighted. My fingers pinched the badge lanyard like it's something alive, something that might bite. I set it on the counter. Brandon's eyes flicked to it, then back to me, and he smiles. Small, controlled, the kind of smile you give a person you're about to replace. "Thank you for your contributions," he said, loud enough for the two engineers near the elevators to hear. He wants them to watch me shrink. Instead, I stood taller. Not because I'm brave. Because if I fall apart here, in front of him, he'll carry that moment like a trophy. I lift the folder, press it to my chest like armor, and walk out with my face steady while my pulse hammers in my ears. In the parking lot, the cold air hits me so hard my eyes water. I taste metal, like I bit my tongue without noticing. I sit in my car, hands locked around the steering wheel, and I whisper the only honest sentence I can manage. "You're really doing this." My phone buzzes. An email notification still sneaks through, and the subject line makes my stomach drop. Batch 7K114 release approval. Final. I stare at that email until the words blur. Batch 7K114? The one I refused to sign off on. The one with test data that didn't match the product in the boxes. The one I said could hurt someone. My chest goes tight. Not panic. Not yet. Something colder. Understanding. They didn't fire me despite the report. They fired me because of it, and now they're shipping anyway. I look straight through the windshield at the plant. Bright lights, clean signage, the company logo glowing like a promise. My hands stop shaking. Anger doesn't explode in me. It settles into a shape. Whistleblower fired. Company collapsed. That's what this became. Not a dramatic moment. A decision made in fluorescent light by a man who thought compliance was optional. I open my laptop on the passenger seat and pull up my personal notebook, where I've been writing dates and batch numbers for months. My name is Claire Whitaker. I'm 46 years old. Born and raised in Ohio, and I've spent my entire adult life in quality, because I believe safe isn't just a slogan. It's a promise to people who will never know my name. If you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, please do. I wasn't a hero type. I was the person who caught small problems before they became headlines. I wrote the boring procedures. I trained operators who rolled their eyes until they understood why it mattered. I was the one who walked the floor at 5 a.m. because paperwork doesn't tell you when a bet machine sounds wrong, and I had a lot to lose. A mortgage, a teenager who needed braces, a husband who just had his hours cut at the warehouse, health insurance that mattered more than pride. I didn't have the luxury of being reckless. So when I say I didn't go nuclear, believe me, I didn't. I did what I was trained to do. I documented. 18 months earlier, Brandon Keene shook my hand and told me, "I want you to be my right hand." Brandon arrived like a solution. New quality director. Strong resume. Clean suit. Firm handshake. He toured the plant with a clipboard like he could measure integrity and check boxes. "You've been keeping this place steady," he told me, stopping beside the testing lab. "I need someone who knows the truth, not just the theory." It felt like respect. It felt like finally being seen. I believed him, because I wanted to. You don't survive in quality unless you're stubbornly hopeful that leadership cares about doing it right. 2 weeks later, he asked me to help streamline our release process. More speed, less red tape. He said those exact words, like safety was a decorative ribbon we could cut. I didn't argue. I asked questions. What's the plan for verifying we're not missing issues? He winked. That's why you're here. The first time I realized he meant streamline as ignore, it came in a small brown box from the complaints department. The box held 3 returned units and 1 handwritten note from a hospital tech. Device failed during procedure. Patient harm possible. The kind of sentence that makes your skin go cold. I carried it into Brandon's office. He was on a call, laughing. He waved me in without muting. I stood there holding the box like evidence in a trial. When he finally hung up, his smile faded. What is that? A complaint. Possible failure in the field. I kept my voice flat, careful. We need to quarantine related lots and investigate before we ship more. He leaned back and steepled his fingers. Claire, you're catastrophizing. 1 complaint doesn't mean a trend. It means we don't know yet, I said, and we're shipping into operating rooms. He stood, walked around his desk, and lowered his voice. Do you want to be known as the person who slows everything down? That afternoon, I found a corrected test report in the system, edited after the timestamp with no explanation. The report looked normal until you knew where to look. The numbers were cleaner. The pass-fail margin was suddenly comfortable. The initials in the approval field weren't the technicians. I called the tech into a side room. His hands trembled as he opened the file. That's not what I entered, he whispered. Did you change it? His eyes flicked to the door. No, but I was told. We were behind. And Brandon said, he swallowed. He said it would be handled. At that moment, I saw the machine behind the machines. Pressure, fear, shortcuts that looked harmless until they stacked up like kindling. I didn't storm into Brandon's office. I didn't threaten anyone. I started doing what quality people do when they're scared. I created a paper trail that could survive a courtroom. I saved the original file hash. I printed the audit trail. I wrote the date and time in my notebook. The next morning, Brandon called me in and closed the door. He didn't sit. He stood by the window, watching the production floor like it belonged to him. I heard you've been asking questions, he said. I found an unauthorized change in a test report. I replied. Calm, simple, factual. Brandon turned, eyes sharp. We're in a competitive market. Do you want this plant to stay open, Claire? Do you want people to keep their jobs? I felt the trap snap shut around the room. If I push, I'm hurting the team. If I stay quiet, I'm betraying patients. I want us to stay open, I said, by not becoming the company that hurts someone and lies about it. His jaw tightened. You're getting emotional. No, I said softly. I'm getting accurate. He stepped closer. Drop it. 2 days later, I was removed from the release approval chain without being told. I discovered it by accident, like you discover rot under paint. I opened the release dashboard and saw my name missing from the approval routing. At first, I thought it was a glitch. Then I saw the new name in my slot, Cole Ransom, a production supervisor who'd never worked in quality a day in his life. Cole avoided my eyes when I asked him about it. Brandon said it's temporary. Temporary meant until you learn your place. I went home that night and sat at the kitchen table while my husband Mark cooked boxed pasta like it was a gift. He asked how my day was. I said, fine, because the truth felt too heavy to put on the table with the forks. After dinner, I opened my notebook again and added a new heading, retaliation. The following week, Brandon announced a culture reset meeting, mandatory, all staff, Friday at 3 p.m. The conference room smelled like burnt coffee and nervous sweat. Brandon stood at the front with a slide that said alignment. Not safety, not quality. Alignment. He smiled at the group. We've had some friction, he said, eyes landing on me for a beat too long. We're not here to police each other. We're here to move forward together. Then he did it. So smoothly some people didn't even realize it. He described a certain type of employee who spreads doubt, who creates panic, who doesn't understand business realities. He never said my name. He didn't have to. Heads turned anyway. My face stayed still. I took notes. I wrote down his exact phrases. My pen didn't shake until he finished and the room clapped, because people clap when they're scared. After the meeting, one of the lab techs brushed past me and whispered, "I'm sorry." That night, I logged into the system from home and found batch 7K114 queued for release. Again. Batch 7K114 sat in the queue like a loaded weapon. The same lot tied to the complaint. The same lot with altered test data. The same lot Brandon wanted out the door before month end. I didn't have release authority anymore, but I still had eyes. I pulled the audit trail, the deviation history, and the complaint record. It was all there, messy, incomplete, rushed. I emailed Brandon, one paragraph, no emotion. This lot is linked to a field complaint and unresolved data integrity concerns, recommending hold pending investigation. He replied in 6 minutes, noted, proceeding. That's the moment my fear turned into certainty. Not that he might be wrong, but that he knew and didn't care. I printed his email. I slid it into a folder at home labeled, "If they fire me." The next day, HR emailed me, "Performance improvement discussion, mandatory." HR booked a small room with no windows. Brandon sat beside the HR rep like they were co-signing each other's story. A printed performance plan waited on the table, already filled out. "Claire," Brandon began, voice warm, "we're concerned you're struggling to adapt." I blinked once. "To what?" "To our new direction," he said, as if direction was a force of nature. The HR rep slid the paper toward me. Vague complaints, poor collaboration, negative influence, communication issues, no dates, no incidents, no specifics. "I'd like examples," I said. Brandon's smile tightened. "You always want documentation." "Yes," I replied. "That's my job." He leaned in, lowering his voice like a parent to a child. "Sign it, show good faith, and we'll move on." I looked down and saw a line at the bottom. "Employee acknowledges concerns are valid." I didn't sign. I didn't argue. I simply pushed the paper back across the table. "I can't acknowledge something you can't substantiate," I said. "If you have factual performance concerns, document them. I'll respond in writing." Brandon's eyes flashed. Just a flicker. Enough to tell me I'd stepped on his ego. HR cleared her throat. "This is an opportunity, Claire." "No," I said, still calm. "This is a record you want me to help you create." Brandon's voice dropped. "Do you understand how this looks?" "I understand exactly how it looks," I said. "That's why I'm not signing." I stood, thanked them politely, and walked out with my legs steady and my stomach screaming. In the hallway, my phone buzzed. A calendar invite popped up. Executive shipment review, private. My name wasn't on it. That night, I drafted a formal complaint to the company's ethics hotline. Careful, precise, and factual. I filed the internal complaint the way the handbook promised would protect me. Not dramatic, not emotional. Dates, documents, screenshots, audit trails, a timeline of changes tied to specific lots. When I hit submit, my finger hovered for half a second, because a part of me still wanted to believe the system worked. That somewhere in the corporate, there was a person who'd read it and say, "This is serious." I went to work the next day and kept my head down. I didn't gossip. I didn't warn people. I did my job, quietly, like a professional. At 2:07 p.m., Brandon stopped by my desk. He didn't sit. He didn't smile. "Interesting hotline complaint," he said softly. My blood went cold. I stared up at him. "That's confidential." He shrugged. "Nothing is confidential when you're poisoning the culture." Then he leaned closer and whispered, "You just made yourself a problem." The following morning, IT emails me. "Access changes applied per leadership request." My access wasn't fully removed, just clipped, like wings trimmed so you don't notice until you try to fly. Complaint database, read-only. Audit logs, restricted. Release dashboards, hidden. My tools were taken away one permission at a time, each one plausible, each one deniable. I walked to IT and asked calmly for the ticket number authorizing the change. The technician looked uncomfortable. "It came from Brandon," he said, barely above a whisper. "Put that in writing," I said. He hesitated, then nodded. "Okay." Back at my desk, I opened my notebook and wrote, "Retaliation escalates. Evidence of interference." I didn't feel triumphant. I felt sick. Because the more they cornered me, the more I understood. They weren't planning to fix anything. They were planning to ship and pray. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay beside Mark and listened to his breathing, thinking about strangers on operating tables who would never know my name, never know that a woman in Ohio tried to stop a failure before it became their pain. At 6:40 a.m., my phone buzzed with that email. Batch 7K1 and 14 release approval, final. I decided I won't be the last line of defense inside a system that's actively cutting my hands off. I didn't leak anything. I didn't threaten anyone. I did the one thing Brandon couldn't manipulate. I followed the law. I contacted the appropriate regulatory reporting channel for medical device concerns and requested guidance on submitting documentation. I kept it clean. No opinions, no insults, no revenge words. Just evidence. Organized. Then I waited. 3 days passed. At work, Brandon acted like I didn't exist until he needed me to train someone. He emailed, "Please transition your responsibilities to Cole by the end of the week." I stared at the screen. He wanted me to hand my knowledge to the person replacing me, like I was supposed to help tighten the noose. I replied, "Happy to provide documented procedures. Please specify scope." Polite, controlled, professional. On Thursday, a courier arrives at the plant gate, carrying a sealed envelope addressed to Quality Director. Rumors move faster than forklifts. By the time I heard courier, half the floor was already whispering. Brandon marched past my desk toward the front offices. His face looked tight. Not angry, not smug. Tight, like a man who just realized the room has cameras he forgot about. An hour later, he called an emergency leadership huddle. Doors closed, voices raised, then silence. At lunch, Cole sat across from me, chewing like the air tasted wrong. "Something's happening," he muttered. I sipped water and said nothing. My stomach was a knot. Not because I wanted chaos, because chaos in medical manufacturing means real people can get hurt. At 4:30 p.m., Brandon emerged and walked straight to my desk. His voice was too controlled. "We need to talk." He says, "Did you contact anyone outside this company?" I held his gaze. I reported concerns through the channels available to me. His nostrils flared. "Answer the question." "I'm not discussing protected communications," I said evenly. For the first time, his composure slipped. His hand tightened on the back of my chair, white knuckles. "You're playing a dangerous game." "No," I replied. "I'm doing my job." He leaned close enough that I could smell his aftershave. "If regulators show up here, people lose jobs. That will be on you." I didn't blink. "If regulators show up, it's because something warranted it." He straightened, forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Then I guess we'll see what happens to you first." 2 hours later, security met me at my workstation. "Claire Whitaker?" the guard asked. "We need you to come with us." As I stand, my computer screen flashes an alert. Deviation reopened, batch 7K114. Someone is scrambling. They didn't even take me to Brandon's office. They took me to the lobby, like a public lesson. The HR rep's voice was smooth. "You're being separated from the company." "For what?" I asked. Brandon stepped forward and said it like he was bored of me. "You're not a cultural fit." I almost laughed, but it came out as air. "Because I wouldn't sign off on a questionable product." His jaw tightened. "Because you refuse to align." Behind him, I saw the plant manager watching from a doorway, lips pressed together, doing nothing. People looked away like my shame might be contagious. I signed nothing. I accepted the folder. I walked out, and that's when the email hit. Batch 7K114 released. Not just queued. Released. Sitting in my car, I realized they didn't fire me to stop the report. They fired me so they could ship without me in the way. 2 business days later, my phone rings from an unfamiliar number. "This is Agent Morrow," a calm voice says. "I'm following up on a report regarding medical device manufacturing concerns. Are you available to speak?" My mouth goes dry. I glance around my kitchen. Dish towel on the counter, my kid's backpack by the door, normal life holding its breath. "Yes," I say. "I'm available." The call is methodical. He asks for dates, lot numbers, what I personally observed, and what documents support each claim. I answered carefully, sticking to facts. When I don't know something, I say so. At the end, he pauses. Your documentation is unusually thorough. I swallow. I assumed no one would believe me without it. 2 days later, Mark texts me from his break. There are people in suits at your old plant. Like a lot. That night, a former coworker calls and whispers, they're pulling batch records. Brandon's freaking out. The coworker, voice shaking, tells me they were ordered to clean up documentation, to make it consistent, to fix formatting, the innocent language people use when they mean to hide the mess. I tell her one sentence, don't change anything. Then I stop talking, so I won't put her at risk with a long call. The next morning, a second call comes in. The same agent. Calm voice, different message. We've issued a request for immediate production holds on related lots pending review, he said. Have you received any communication from your former employer? No, I answered. Good, he says. Keep it that way. I set my phone down and stare at the wall as the weight of it lands. A hold means shipments stopped, lines paused, contracts disrupted. The kind of thing that makes executives panic. I didn't feel victorious. I felt nauseous, because this is what it takes to make people take safety seriously. At noon, I got a text from Cole. One line, they're blaming you. That evening, a public notice appears. Potential voluntary recall under evaluation. Recall is a word that changes how air feels, even when it's potential, even when it's under evaluation. I watched the notice spread through industry channels like smoke. Not social media, trade bulletins, customer emails, procurement alerts, the professional bloodstream of manufacturing. Mark comes home and finds me sitting at the table with my laptop open, hands flat against the wood like I'm anchoring myself. Are you okay? He asked. I don't know, I admitted. I wanted them to stop. I didn't want. My voice breaks and I hate it. I swallow hard. I didn't want people to get hurt before they listened. He sits beside me and takes my hand. You didn't cause this. I nod, but my mind is already picturing Brandon. Making calls, pointing fingers, rewriting the story. Late that night, my phone buzzes. An email from HR, subject line, legal notice, preservation request. They're trying to control the narrative now. And I know exactly what they'll do next. They'll look for someone to sacrifice. A week later, a former lab tech visits my house. He stands on my porch with red eyes and a crumpled hat in his hands. They called me in, he says. They said I entered the wrong numbers. They want me to sign a statement saying it was my mistake. My stomach drops. Did you? He shakes his head. No, but they said if I don't, they'll report me. They'll ruin me. I breathe in slow. Calm is not a weakness. Calm is the aim. Listen to me, I say. Don't sign anything false. Ask for the audit trail in writing. Get your own copy of any statement they ask you to sign. And if you're contacted by investigators, tell the truth. He nods like he's drowning, and I've handed him a rope. After he left, I sat at my table and realized Brandon's arrogance has shifted from denial to desperation. The most dangerous phase. 2 days later, the agency issued a public statement. Investigation expanded. Expanded means it's no longer one batch. It's the whole quality system. The company doesn't announce the shutdown. It starts with small signs. A supplier puts them on hold. A client pauses new orders. A temp agency pulls workers. Then one morning, employees show up to lock doors and a printed notice taped to the glass. Operation suspended pending review. The next updates come in waves. Contracts canceled, leadership placed on leave, and an official recall notice that reads like a quiet disaster. The kind of language that tries to sound controlled while admitting something went very wrong. I hear Brandon is escorted out in front of the same lobby cameras he used on me. Not fired for culture. Removed for cause. His signature was on too many approvals, his emails too clear. His pressure too documented. A former coworker told me, voice low, he kept saying you were overreacting, even after the hold, even after the investigators. He thought he could talk his way out. And that's the poetic part. He didn't lose because I attacked him. He lost because he couldn't stop being himself. That night, Mark and I sat on the couch in silence. My kid walks past and asks what's for dinner. Life continues, ordinary and stubborn. I exhale and realize I'm not shaking anymore. The next morning, I got a call from a competitor. We heard what happened. We need someone like you. The new plant is smaller, cleaner, and quieter. The first day, the operations VP met me at the entrance and said, "We don't want shortcuts. We want stability." She didn't say it like a slogan. She said it like a rule. My role isn't glamorous. It's powerful in the only way that matters. I'm allowed to stop the line. I'm allowed to ask questions. I'm allowed to say no without being punished for it. Within months, I'm leading a team rewriting procedures that actually match reality. We stress test, we verify, we listen to the floor. When someone brings up a concern, we treat it like a gift, not a threat. I never hear from Brandon again. No apology, no rage message, no dramatic confrontation, just absence, like a door finally closed on a room that was slowly filling with smoke. And here's what I learned the hard way. If telling the truth makes you disruptive, you're in a place that needs disruption. If your integrity is treated like a problem, the only winning move is walking away, calmly, cleanly, and letting arrogance collapse under the weight of its own lies. Because the truth doesn't need a tantrum, it just needs time.